But excellent.
Just want to say thanks for the opportunity to speak. This is an awesome group. We didn't expect to see this kind of turnout, so this is great. I don't want to take too much time to talk about Tech Hope because we have some very important guests here that have a great message about what's going on in their communities, and they're here to share some of the things that are going on statewide, so it can raise our awareness a little bit. But just, I'm a lifelong resident of Terre, so I really care what happens here in this community. I came together through some of my social media marketing strategy business with Brian Jackson, who's one of the Tech Hope founders, and also Shelley Klingerman and David Dewberry. And we all bring different things to the table as a group. We all have other responsibilities at this point. So we're really passionate about this kind of movement that we want to initiate. So basically Tech Hope really exists on the business side. We are a for-profit LLC, so we're formally organized. And we're doing some online marketing and web development. And we're also developing a mobile app that will better help schools communicate with parents and also act as a fundraiser as well. So we have some of our own things going on, but the reason we're here today is we really are all passionate about a movement to try and organize a culture here in this area, especially in Terre Haute. You know, Steve and everyone at the EDC, it's really difficult in today's business climate to attract these new businesses to Terre Haute. So this is not a new concept. We have a great pool of talent here with Indiana State and Rose-Hulman and the other colleges. A lot of young talent that we can tap into. So we're trying to fill this gap and create a culture. So what we've done at Tech Hope is really try to plug Terre Haute into an ongoing collaborative effort, statewide basically, that is creating this culture for tech startups, innovation, things of that nature. So, you know, we really want to do something that can help see long-term economic benefits and maybe create jobs here in town. So for young entrepreneurs, we have started meetup groups, or a meetup group called Verge, and we meet over at Clabberville once a month. So basically a lot of innovative people, and they're investors, they're entrepreneurs, they're young students that are looking to be mentored by business leaders in the community. We're all coming together once a month for this Verge meeting. So we've started these networking groups to connect everyone in this particular way. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is one of the things that came out of the Verge meeting that we had is we've identified some local young talent. There's a young man. This is a perfect example of why we want to exist. We just want to be facilitators and connectors for people that have ideas to let's grow our own and start our own companies. So there's a young man that works for a corporation here in town that's been involved at a high level of getting patents for this company, things of that nature. He's a very smart individual, and he came to us after this meetup group and said, I have 10 or 12 great ideas to start a business, but I don't know who to talk to, and he's introverted. Typically innovative people can be very introverted. They're not outgoing and out talking to people and finding ways to move their idea along. So this young individual comes to us and says, you know, I've been waiting for something like this to be able to connect with the right people that can mentor me or help me move my ideas along. So here's someone who is smart. If he gets bored with his company and wants to do his own thing, he may move to Indianapolis or another area where there's a better culture that exists right now in Terre Haute. So we don't want that to happen. We want him to find all the mentorship and all the investment and all the things that he needs to be successful. So that is just one good example of what we're trying to do to initiate this movement and create this culture for innovative startup companies. So we need to grow our own. So basically, Tech Hope, we're existing basically to help people execute on their ideas. We're not going to pretend to be the person that can mentor a startup business at all. But through our association with people like our guest speakers here today, we realize that we do have a network we can plug these people into and try to find a way to keep them here in this community. So that's really what we're all about. You know, we want to see things happen here. We want to be a partner with the EDC. We want to give Steve and his group more things in the toolbox to you know, grow business here in this surrounding area. So that's the main reason we exist. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to these three guys and let them speak a little bit. They're all business leaders in their communities. They've taken time. They're interested in what we're doing, Tech Hope. They see that our movement is something that they've already been through and experienced in their communities. So they've taken time out of their really busy schedules to come and talk to you guys today just to share their experiences. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Drew, who's made the trip from Evansville, and we'll start with Drew.
Good morning, and thank you for having us here today. They started with the senior guy because I'm going to talk a little about history. And, Rob, this is a great venue in which to have that discussion. So at night when I read history, I love history, and I love the action that you're doomed to repeat if you don't remember. So to talk a little bit about history, I'm in the end of the second generation of a 67-year-old company. I have 3 children, my brother has 4. We will not be a third generation company because none of our children want to live in Evansville. They don't see Evansville as a community of opportunity. So in that context, you understand somewhat where I come from. I love my community, I love my children. I'm sorry that that's not where they're going to end up. So with that said, I spend a lot of my day, every day, thinking about ways to make my companies more innovative and to make my community more innovative. Partially because I'm out for economic gain, but also because I want my children to see, and I want others' children to see Evansville in Indiana as an innovative place where they can come live. So my little axiom is those who deny the future will be condemned to irrelevance. And if you take nothing else from my remarks, I hope you just start to think about your business in the context that you are facing change brought by innovation. And as a bit of a defense of that position, this is a chart that shows GDP per person over history. And if you notice a logarithmic scale, that even on a logarithmic scale, if you move to the right, you've got the industrial revolutions, and then in roughly 2000, you have the internet there. But that really marks the beginning of the technological revolution. And trust me, in our lifetimes, even people my age are going to see dramatic changes in your lifetime and in your businesses. And in that same vein, I would tell you that the gross world product is about $72 trillion. And this is a recent study released in 2013 that identifies a dozen what are called disruptive technologies. And the prediction is that by 2025, it's not too far out in the future, those 12 will account for $33 trillion of gross world product. And what I take from that is that somewhere between 25 and 50% of the economy of 10 to 15 years in the future doesn't even exist today. Let's look at 2 of those, automation of knowledge, workflow, and also advanced robotics. Anybody heard the term the singularity? The definition of singularity is the point at which artificial intelligence equals and begins to exceed human ability. It's a pretty crazy thought, but there are people that are very smart to believe that could be as soon as maybe 30 or 40 years. And I would say that there already are self-assembling robots. MIT just displayed some. They can assemble themselves for different functions. And it will not be in the too far in the distant future where we have autonomous robots in our midst. Kind of scary. So, what are we to do? I'm a big fan of prayer. So you can pray. We're not going to be impacted dramatically from this. But I would suggest that the better thing is to prepare to embrace these changes as really opportunities for a better life and a better world. And that's a lot about what these guys are trying to do. The good news is we live in Indiana, and it's good news for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of policies in Indiana, but there's a lot of energy in Indiana and a lot of resources here that really favor us from the standpoint of innovation companies. And this particular chart shows the amount of angel investment. So it's very early stage investment in companies, very much earlier than venture capital. So it's when companies are actually starting. But what it would show you here is that 86% of early stage investment happens within a day's drive of the investor. So I actually will drive a lot farther than that today, but I drew a circle that roughly approximates my day's drive in Evansville. And I did the same circle in California. And with a little bit of extrapolation, you might say that the amount of capital invested and available to invest in early stage companies probably is as high or greater than anywhere on the West Coast, right here in Indiana. So there is access to capital. It is but it's there. I'm going to tell you about two businesses that have sprouted in Evansville that are tech-based. It's a really interesting model because the world is changing in business models as well. One is called Ditto.com, and it is a company that creates a ditto or a facsimile of your face that allows you then to use that image and rotate it up and down and around to try on eyeglasses virtually on the web. It's an Evansville native who went to Ball State and then went to Stanford to do an MBA. Met some guys who were really into augmented reality and great software people and launched the company in the Bay Area. But the lens writing, all our inventory and all fulfillment is in Evansville because there is such a cost advantage and logistics advantage to be doing that in Evansville. So I think it's a model you'll see more going forward in businesses where they aren't all located, the whole operation, even small businesses, will not just be located in local communities. And another one in Evansville is Turbo Labs, which is in the hospital supply chain business. They are a very early stage company. Two Evansville natives, one is in Evansville, one is in San Diego. They have two W-2 employees in Evansville, two in San Diego, one in Indianapolis, and then they have an independent contractor in San Diego, one out in Mobile, Alabama. This is a company that has had a couple $1,000s in revenue at this point, but they have employees all over the country. So the culture of innovation, I believe, is the path forward for our communities. And that, I'm not suggesting abandoning industry. You're not going to replace your core industry next year or the next decade with these startups, but it is an important component, I think, of a vibrant community. And I think increasingly the entrepreneurs and the innovation that they drive will be the defining factors in the quality of our life in our communities. It's important to understand, too, that more and more startups compete globally, even if they're located in Terre or Evansville. And because of that, they have to be world class. And the examples of both Ditto and Turbo show that the companies need to be nimble, they need to be collaborative, and they need to attract and use the talent, the best talent in the world, no matter where that is, including remotely. So that'll cap my remarks, and I'll turn it over to a couple of guys that are a lot more interesting than me.
Oh, that's a presentation. So that was very nice. To give a brief overview, I am new to Indiana. I've only been in Indiana for the last 3 years. I came born and raised in Napa. Had a company where half my staff was in San Francisco, half of my staff was in Indianapolis. Came out to Indianapolis, was really blown away by the ecosystem that existed there. My wife is from actually Anderson, Indiana, but she did not have a desire to come back at all. It was all on me. And when we came out, we literally came out with bags for 3 months. Our whole house was packed away, and my son was 4.5, and I just went back 2 months ago to actually get all of our stuff out of California after 2.5 years to be here. And so we're all in. My wife's going to kill me if we're not. And what I've been blown away with is the startup scene in Indiana overall has grown tremendously over the last 10 years. You look at some of the businesses that have grown and been built in the last 10 years and how much revenue from a market standpoint has actually been recognized. I mean, we just had 2 acquisitions in the last 3 months. Does anybody know who those 2 are? Anybody? Exact Target. Largest marketing automation purchase ever coming out from Indiana. Right? It started in Indiana, $2.5 billion, $320 million to the ecosystem for the employees that reside with us. Good change, right? We've had over 10 or I think it's 10 or 12 IPOs acquisitions in the last 10 years that have represented about $4.3 billion in market value, 300 or about 3,500 jobs. So it's great to see. Indianapolis is being recognized nationally as a place to put your startup, to put your business. I found more locals don't understand nor have the pride and knowledge where they live. It's this false humility that exists and drives me nuts. You guys actually have a really awesome economy. In California, you have positive numbers on the balance sheet. Right? I mean, that's unbelievable. The incentives that you have from the state level, I work directly with the IAC and Lilly Endowment and your universities. You have mind share that's unbelievable. The university segment, we as a state bring in more out-of-state students than any other state, period. Yet 80% of them leave. That's a problem, right? And part of that is because you don't facilitate the opportunity for them to collaborate and come up with new ideas. They don't think it can happen here. Why? Because they don't see the acceptance of change or anybody to spur them on to be changers in today's world. Does that make sense? And so one of the things that we focus on, and you'll hear from John, because John does a phenomenal job of this, is providing environments for those that want to cause change, to learn how to cause change and support them through the process. And for us, and for me, seeing what's going on with Tech Hope, I think that's exactly what you guys are trying to do, provide an environment, a location, for those students that you have here now to be able to go, to learn from some of you that have gone through it, that understand business. I didn't have, John and I were talking about it a bit, I didn't have mentors, so I learned through blood, sweat, and tears. I got killed with the process. But I've learned a lot. Now enjoy the side of mentoring. So for all of you from an economic development standpoint, right now I work with TechPoint, which is a nonprofit that oversees kind of the tech community. And my job is to put a plan together on how Indiana as a state is going to attract and retain tech talent here. And the first start of that is actually, I'm going around to all the major corporations and sitting down with all of the VPs that have come from out of the state and shooting video testimonials on why they're here. We have a state hit a demographic and a value set that the coasts don't have. And that is, we care about family. We have phenomenal cost of living, and our schools are phenomenal. And so when we don't take students and they leave, you actually have the ability to go after those students that have left 7 to 10 years later and say, hey, by the way, everything that you've learned on everybody else's money and time, you can actually bring back to our economy and help us grow. But you have to have intention behind that, right? So my whole belief system in Indiana is that I think there's an opportunity for all of the communities to do this. I work with Lafayette, I work with Bloomington, Indianapolis, Fishers, and to be able to come out here, I thank you guys for your time, but it's definitely going to take a lot more than these four to put this together, a lot more support than what they have in time and resources, money currently. And that only can happen when everybody comes together and collaborates and believes in what could be, not what is now. So, my side, I'm going to hand it over to John now, because now it's John's turn. But I believe that you guys have something awesome. I'm blown away by this building. And it was funny because when we were standing in there and you watch everybody walk in, it's kind of like you walk through those doors and you realize how vast it is and you're blown away. Everybody's face is like, I didn't know this existed. Yet you live here, right? It's the exact same thing in this city. When you start to open your mind and understand the potential that we have from a technology standpoint, from a startup standpoint, that doesn't take millions of dollars to start up. Some of these, $25,000, $50,000, it's not small or large risk. You're going to be blown away at what the potential is from a job creation as well as revenue recognition from a state level later. Okay? So John.
Thank you very much. Tough couple of guys to follow, but I'm happy to be here, excited to spend a few minutes with you. I would love to be able to do this for an hour and a half, not just 5 minutes, because this is something I'm very passionate about, as well as these two gentlemen. My name is John Wechsler. I am an entrepreneur. I reside in Fishers, Indiana. I've spent most of my time in the area. I was born and raised here, lived in California for a while for a startup that we moved out there. Most recently, I helped launch an enterprise called Launch Fishers. It's a 16,000 square foot launch pad for high potential enterprises. High potential enterprises can be anything. Startups, software companies. We have a balloon operator that has giant hot air balloons. We have not-for-profits. We have governmental activity that happens there. Anything that's impactful to our community launches out of this facility. We started less than a year ago. We have less than, like I said, less than a year under our belt and 260 members currently in the facility. It's growing rapidly. We celebrated our first launch about a month ago. The first company that came in is a company called Blue Ridge Digital. You may have read about the entrepreneur Santiago Jaramillo. He's from Colombia, and he came to Miami when he was 9. He ended up at Indiana Wesleyan, where he graduated as valedictorian, and ended up landing in Fishers, right? He was seeking mentorship and some help. We ended up connecting several years ago. When he graduated, he bought a home in Fishers and was the very first member of Launch Fishers when we opened. Fast forward 11 months in his business career, he now has 13 employees, occupies 3,000 square feet in Fishers, and his case study, Exhibit A, on why we did what we did. we are focusing on organic economic development, job creation from within, and doing that from within the innovation-driven economy, right? Traditional entrepreneurs will find their way. There are a gazillion ways to support them. The person that wants to open up a shop that's going to sell to a local audience and won't typically have a ramp in their revenue and they're not disruptive or innovation-driven, there are lots of ways for them to find the help they need. The innovation-driven entrepreneurs, however, there's a vacuum right now, right? You have tremendous resources here with the universities. You're coming at it from a position of strength, right? With your universities, your rich business history. I think that's something that if you focus a little bit of energy in supporting the people that want to create this ecosystem to support entrepreneurs, especially the innovation-driven entrepreneurs, you will see 15, 20 years from now, those returns start to come back. If, Mike mentioned the exact Target example. I mean, I remember that. I watched it happen, right? When they launched, Scott Dorsey and I were friends, and I remember sitting down above the office that is now Angie's List with about 4 or 5 of them, right? And we used to get together and talk about best practices with a couple of other guys, Neil Rothermel, who's now an 8,500 entrepreneur 4 or 5 times in a row, Jerry Hayes, who's now a professor at IU and a successful investor. And we would all kind of get together and talk about how do we grow our companies. There was no Verge, there was no, significant tech point influence at that time for entrepreneurs. And so we kind of made our way. We found our way. What would happen if you would focus the energy of a community behind the idea of supporting innovation-driven entrepreneurs? And that would be kind of my challenge for you today. I don't believe that you need to invest a ton of money to make this happen, but what you need is mind share, commitment to get behind this initiative. And I mean, like Drew said, you can ignore it, but you do at your own peril. I mean, the train is leaving and you are on it or under it when it comes to innovation-driven entrepreneurship. I think you can come at it from a position of strength with your universities and with the rich business history that's here and the financial strength that exists in this community. I think it's really just a question of being open to it, probably reading about it, learning about it a bit. If anyone is interested in this, there's a book called The Rainforest. I would encourage you to check it out. A guy named Victor Hwang, H-W-A-N-G, it's called Rainforest, subtitled Building the Next Silicon Valley. I am not proposing that anyone try to be the next Silicon Valley, but I believe there are lessons learned when you start thinking about the ecosystem to support these entrepreneurs. And it's not just your traditional land, labor, capital entrepreneurship, the things that we learn about in school. It's things like, what is your culture of failure, right? Can an entrepreneur come out and try a technology-related business that comes in and flashes and isn't successful right out of the gate? Maybe there's some failure, but they pivot one way. And then they learn something else and they go again. And if you look at the most successful companies that are innovation-driven, they don't nail it the first time out. It's an iterative process. And if you read this book, if you're interested in it from an economic development perspective, I promise you there will be some really good takeaways from that. My email address, if I can help out, because I know we're really short on time, is John, John, @launchfishers.com. And I'd be happy to correspond with any of you if you have questions or think there's something that I can contribute. So I want to try to keep us on time. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.